So I'm Anne McCooey. Oh, I can take off my mask, can I? Because I'm more than 6 feet away from all of you.
Thank you.
So, and I do frequently a lot of in-person meetings, and we have several of our members for a couple of our community groups who read lips, and I'll tell you, the last 2 years has been very difficult. Janet's one of those. But it's been very difficult for them to do meetings where people are sitting around in a room, they're all wearing their masks, and you know, they like totally miss the meeting. I have to take them off to the side later on and, you know, one-on-one go through exactly what was happening. I think that's probably one of the worst parts about COVID. So today, I am so excited to be here, and I really appreciate all of you making today a priority, because this is, of all the projects that the Alliance works on, this is probably my favorite, and it's kind of a personal pet project. So the Alliance, as Sue indicated, is dedicated really to working in the northwest corner of the city of Buffalo. I refer to us as the ugly redheaded stepchildren of Buffalo because we seem to be forgotten. Somehow the 198 cut us off on the south end of things, and the 190 has cut us off on the west end of things. So people zip by us on expressways, but they don't come into our community anymore, and everybody forgets that we're there. We're also a community of small businesses. We have only 2 large employers, and most of the people who work in those jobs don't even live in our community. They come in, they work, they go home. And then the people in our community have to leave to go to lower paying jobs in other parts of the city. So it's really an area that needed a great deal of revitalization. And in the early 2000s, the mayor had this great idea. He said, let's take these areas of the city where there's a need for revitalization, and let's have the community get together and figure out the plan for it. They can tell us what their priorities are. They can tell us how they think we should be doing revitalization. So Mary Ann Kedron, who is this incredible woman who's a lifelong resident of Black Rock and Riverside, she chaired the committees for Black Rock, Riverside, West Hertel, and Grant Amherst. Those are kind of the 4 sub-communities of our service area. And when they were done, it took almost 3 years. They had lots and lots and lots of meetings with lots and lots and lots of people. And when they were done, they came up with these revitalization plans that are about this thick, beautiful, full color, great maps and diagrams and photographs. And the key priorities for the people that lived in the community, and the recommendations were preserve the history because it's the oldest part of the city of Buffalo. And a lot of the people are aging out, and they wanted to make sure that the history and the story of the community stayed alive. Do something to economically improve what's going on here for our businesses, for our homes, for the residents. And then let's talk about the environment, because now we're cut off. We are the largest waterfront community in the city of Buffalo, and we are cut off from our waterfront. So those became the 3 priorities of the Alliance, because Mary Ann and her committee said, well, the city has no infrastructure to implement these plans, so let's just start our own not-for-profit. She will now tell you never to start a not-for-profit in a poor community. But it does bring out the volunteers, because there was already a volunteer base. They were set with these priorities. So we set the priorities of history, economic development, and environmental work. And we started the Black Rock Historical Society. 2 years ago, we actually spun them off as their own not-for-profit. So they are no longer part of what we do, although we do still work together on a lot of things. And so our 2 focuses right now really are economic growth and development and environmental initiatives. And the environmental initiatives really truly are because a good, healthy environment is an indicator of a quality of life. And we wanted to make sure everybody understood that. So some of the environmental initiatives that we do at the Alliance, we run 3 community gardens. 2 of them are some of the oldest in the city and the largest. We produce over 700 pounds of food in each one of our gardens annually. Most of our community is a food desert. Our nearest significant supermarkets are on Kenmore Avenue with the Price Right, Tops on Elmwood, and Wegmans down on Amherst Street. Those are in the fringes, the outside fringes of most of our community members. So it's more than a mile for most people to go to a supermarket to get a variety of fresh produce. So our community gardens are really critical. We do an environmental speaker series annually. We do projects like we give out sunflower seeds. We started with 1,000 sunflower seeds 4 years ago. We now give out over 5,000 sunflower seeds. And 2 years ago, we started a seed bank where we give out seeds. We have a native plant bed, tree farm. We took seeds from the sycamore on Franklin Street, which is the oldest tree in the city of Buffalo. We took seeds 10 years ago, planted them in our tree farm, and over the last 2 years, we've been rehoming them into parks and communities in the city of Buffalo. Last spring, we actually got 200 native tree seedlings from the DEC, and we replanted those now in our tree farm. So in a couple of years, we're going to be moving them out and retreeing the community as well. We partner with other organizations on our environmental issues. Annually, we work with about 45 other not-for-profits on a variety of things. More than half of those are environmental organizations. We also manage the Northwest Buffalo Tour of Gardens. That's part beautification, it's part environmental. The Habitat Project, which I love. And then we have lots of clover, which I'll tell you about very briefly at the end. And then we do our really, really free markets. Now, really, really free markets are where people come and they put things on a table that they no longer need, love, or want, and then people can come and take them. It is commerce free. There's no bartering, there's no exchanging, there's no money. It's all free. And they go to a nice new home where somebody will love them or want them. And what that does, and the reason I put it under our environmental initiatives, is not only does it help the economy of the community, because we have a lot of immigrants who come here with very little or nothing. And they need these things. So they're going to good homes. But more importantly, it's keeping it out of landfills, because most of the stuff would be put out for trash pickup day and end up in some dump. So I put that under one of our environmental initiatives as well. And so back in 2018, and I should tell you, I am the officially as of January 1st, the very first staff person for the Rock-Riverside Alliance. Up until that point, I was a volunteer and a part-time project manager. I worked part-time implementing projects that I got grants for us to do. Somebody had to do them and manage them, so that was my job. But I probably volunteered more hours than I actually worked. We are almost exclusively, up until January 1st, we were exclusively volunteer-driven and managed. In the last 4 years, we've brought in over $1.2 million worth of investment into our communities. Most of that money stays in our community. Whenever we can use local vendors or hire local craftspeople to do our project work, we do that because we really believe that's part of our mission as well. And less than 9% of that goes to administration and operations. So we are a very lean, mean operational machine. Most not-for-profits run at about a 25, most healthy not-for-profits will run at about a 25 to 29 or 30% operational administration budget. We're at 9. So those are a couple of things I'm really proud of. So, I clicked too fast. So back in 2018, Mary Ann said to me, hey, we were talking about our environmental speaker series for the year, and she said, did you know that the National Wildlife Federation had a program where you could certify your yard as a habitat? And I'm like, no, I had no idea. Now Mary Ann knows my yard. I'm in the city. I have a small backyard, but she knows I have a lot of rabbits and groundhogs and squirrels and all kinds of stuff in my yard all the time. And she said, I bet your yard could be certified. So I looked it up and I was like, yeah, sure enough, it could. So I certified my yard and she said, would you want to do a presentation on that for our speaker series? I said, okay. So that night I did my presentation. There were about 30 people or so in the audience. And at the end of it, I challenged them to go and certify their own yards. Now, I was going to get excited if like 2 or 3 people went and did it. All of a sudden, I'm getting emails from people sending me their certification certificates, and that they had done it, and 12 people out of the 30 that were there went home and within like 2 weeks had certified their yards. They were very excited about it. So as I'm looking further into the whole NWF program, I found out that you could certify a community. And I was looking at how they define communities, and communities could be a city or a county, or it could be a neighborhood, or a gated community, or just a geographically defined area, a zip code you could consider a community. And so I looked into it and I thought, oh, let's certify Black Rock and Riverside. Well, then when I looked at it, I thought, it takes almost as many, you get points, and we'll talk about points later, but it takes almost as many points to certify Black Rock and Riverside because points are based on your population, and we are very heavily populated, very dense population for 3.5 square miles. So it takes almost as many points to certify Black Rock and Riverside as it would to certify the entire city of Buffalo. So I said, let's just certify Buffalo. And we'll talk about the reasons behind that in a minute, too. So we went ahead and we registered to certify the city of Buffalo. Now, the reason that we chose the NWF program, and I did look into other programs as I was exploring these options, was because this is a grassroots effort. Anybody can do this. Kids can do it. The elderly can do it. You can certify if you have, no backyard. I have one woman who certified her second-floor balcony on her duplex, where she's got this amazing container garden going on, and that's a certified wildlife habitat. Her second-story balcony is a habitat, and everybody can get involved. It's also proven, and it's been around forever. Right now, they have over 270,000 certified habitats countrywide. So it's very widely accepted, and it's a great place for people to start with just basic education on how to make the ecosystem in your neighborhood healthier and more friendly. So what's a habitat, and how does a space become certified as a habitat? Most people think that this is a habitat, and you'd be right, it is. And there's some wildlife in the habitat. That's me and my kids when we were in Denali a few years back. And most people, when you say wildlife, this is what they think of. And they're right, that's all wildlife. But so is this. And so is that. And this is a habitat. This is the photo of my backyard from my second-story window. That's a close-up in the springtime when there's not snow. And it's all about planting with a purpose. And if you plant with a purpose, you can go from my backyard to habitat pretty quickly and pretty easily. So Bob was gracious enough to pass out these, and that's kind of what we're going to go through. This is the checklist that the NWF gives you. And all you have to do is follow this checklist, and you can see if your yard or your community garden in your neighborhood or the corner park would certify as a habitat space. So the first thing you need to do is you need to provide food. Now I use the checks that I used for my house. I don't use a bird feeder or squirrel feeders or anything just because we have rats in the city of Buffalo, and why give them anything more than they really need? So I do all of my food for my animals that live in my backyard or pass through my backyard. I do it all by the plants that I plant. So I have fruit trees and bushes. I've got lots of things that produce great pollen. I always leave twigs and things around for them. There's always things that produce nectar, berries, and seeds from plants. So all you need is 3 from this list, and you got the food thing covered. And there are some of my pollinators busy on my flowers and my berries, and I've got a butterfly that's getting some nectar. And then, of course, there's the bunnies. And I plant things low to the ground so that they don't have to go in and eat the things that I have in my raised beds for me. I just plant things they like in low pots, but every once in a while one will sneak in and try to eat some of the parsley or something else that's growing in there that they don't get in their low pots. And then the next thing you need to provide is water. And most people, like, they don't want to keep filling bird baths and things like that, or they worry about standing water. So I found, like, the greatest bird bath ever. It's $10 at Lowe's. And it hangs, and I just have it hanging. I have a couple of them hanging around. I also have some little ceramic dishes that I put, that just milk glass things that my mother had that I didn't know what to do with, so I just set those in the corner of my garden. And when if I have to water, if it hasn't rained in a while, I'll just take some water out of the rain barrel and I'll fill it up. But they're pretty well self-sustaining and they're easy. And the Parks Department has actually let us put these in some of the parks where there are no water features in the city of Buffalo so that we can certify them as habitats as well. So again, really probably one of the simplest and easiest things ever to use. And then you need to provide cover. And on this list, you have to have 2 places where they're going to be sheltered from predators and the weather. So you can have ground cover, which I have. You can have burrows. I built a berm in my backyard for basically to deal with water, but it turns out there's a couple of things who like to live in there. Brush and low logs. I have a pile in the back corner behind my garage. And then dense shrubs and thickets. Again, I have my berry bushes and everything are kind of in the back and have filled in so nicely that that provides natural protection for them. I also have some bunnies that like to nest in my front flower beds, in the very back corners of my front flower beds. And I have a Labradoodle who lives down the street who his owner keeps him on a 20-foot retractable leash, which I hate. And every time he comes by my house, the Labradoodle wants to run into my garden, and the retractable leash goes 20 feet. And I yell at the owner saying, "Could you please get your dog out of my front flower bed?" And he's like, "But there's rabbits there." And I'm like, "I know, can you get your dog out of my front flower bed?" He's like, "But there's rabbits there." I'm like, "But can you get your dog out of my front flower bed?" And then the last time he said, "But there's rabbits there," I said, "And is your goal to see your dog eat my rabbits?" He has not let his dog in my garden since then. So it took a while to learn. In the wintertime, what I do is I'll take my Christmas tree, and for a couple of years I haven't been doing a Christmas tree because I have this huge scheffalera that grows in the corner of my house in my living room, and I've just been decorating that. But I then go and I steal the neighbors' discarded Christmas trees after Christmas, and I drag them into my backyard, and I cut off branches, and I hang them over the edges of my raised beds, and I make what I refer to as bunny huts. It keeps the grass underneath green and accessible to the rabbits. It provides them with the opportunity to run through the snow like they have here back to the bunny hut and stay there and live and be protected in case the snow gets too deep. Right now, my bunny huts in the backyard, though, are completely covered with snow, but I still see bunny tracks going through. The snow is about this high in my backyard right now. There's still bunny tracks going back into them, so I know the rabbits at least have some place to go to get some fresh food. And then places to raise young. So I do have bird houses, nesting boxes, the burrows, as I mentioned, the thicket, and then host plants for caterpillars. I have milkweed growing on the one side of my garage. This is one of the bunnies from my front flower bed this past spring. Isn't he so cute? And then this little guy, or one very similar to him, every year I keep putting up like one more birdhouse, thinking this is the year he's gonna go to the birdhouse, right? Nope, he likes to lay his eggs in my gutter. And it's an enclosed gutter off of my back Florida room, so I can't even really get into it. I mean, like, I had to like really maneuver to get my camera in there and take that picture. Some years it's okay when we have a dry spring. When we have a really wet spring, though, the nest gets flooded, the eggs don't hatch, the bird leaves very disappointed, and then I have to try to figure out a way to get that mess out of my gutter. And then the last part to certify is you need to use some sustainable practices, because this is all about not only just planting purposefully, but maintaining it with the idea that you're gonna do something good for the environment. Now, a lot of people think, oh my God, this means like, I have to have weeds growing in my front lawn. It's like, no, it doesn't mean that. You don't have to let the weeds grow in your front lawn if the weeds in your front lawn really bother you. But it does say that you need to be doing, you pick 2 of these 3 categories, and you just employ at least 1 practice from any of those 3 categories, 2 of any of those 3 categories. So in my house, I do rainwater from my rain barrel from the roof. I do water-wise landscaping, as I mentioned. I'm gradually taking out my front lawn and turning it into all garden. The Labradoodle is going to be really upset when that happens. And when I dig up the lawn portion of it each year, I move it into the backyard to create a berm because the street right behind my house is up higher than my backyard is. So when it rains, all the water runs into my backyard. My backyard can be pretty swampy. So I'm actually using this berm that I'm building to absorb the water so my backyard's a little bit healthier. I've also planted some things in there that really like a lot of water, and they're thriving. And then I use soaker hoses for irrigation, and I use lots of mulch. For controlling exotic species, as I'm redoing things in my yard, I'll take out the invasive things. I live in a neighborhood that was very heavily Italian, and I'm not saying this to in any way, shape, or form cast aspersions on Italians in their gardening, but back in the 50s and 60s, they all loved Rose of Sharon. Loved Rose of Sharon. If you've ever had Rose of Sharon, you know how quickly they self-seed and they expand the boundaries that you'd like to keep them in. So as I'm starting to redo part of my landscaping, every year 1 more Rose of Sharon bush comes out from the previous owners. Eventually, I may only have 1 bush left. That's my goal. And then, try to replace them with natives. A lot of people say, so you're telling me I have to just have native plants in my yard to be a habitat. It's like, no, you don't. You really don't. The thing I like most about this program is this would be nice, but it's not an absolute deal breaker if you don't do this. You can pick and choose which things fit your personal gardening style, your goals for what your lawn or garden should look like, and what you want to encourage to come into your yard and be part of your habitat space. And then, of course, organic practices, I don't use pesticides, I don't use fertilizer, and I do compost. So that's my checklist. Everybody asks me when I say I don't use pesticides or herbicides or anything, they say, well, why do you keep the rabbits out? And it's like, I don't. I don't. If you want to keep the rabbits out, though, there are a lot of products on the market. One of the ones that most people have found is really useful that I've recommended is rabbit scram. It's all natural. It's like dried deer's blood or something, and they hate it. And if you sprinkle that around, and it doesn't harm the pets, it doesn't harm the rabbits, it doesn't harm humans, and it doesn't harm the environment. So you can find products like this if you really want to, and quite honestly, it's not really all that expensive. But in my case, I don't mind the rabbits in my backyard. I just plant things that they like to eat in places where they can get it easily, and then they can leave like my beautiful ornamental flowers alone. If I don't want them to eat my tulips before they even come fully up out of the ground, I plant daffodils around them because they don't like the daffodils, and the daffodils come up first. So I just plan for those kinds of things, and then when you're done with your checklist, you get this great certificate. See, I'm number 215,489. And I did this in 2018. And now they're up to over 270,000 habitats in the country. But more importantly, you get beautiful, beautiful species coming into your yard and into your community. And you can have domestic life and wildlife cohabitating in the same urban environment, in my case. My dog used to like to eat rabbit poop. And the rabbits didn't seem to mind. He was blind and deaf, so they didn't care at all. So then after we started with the individual certification, as I said, I saw that you could certify a community, and we decided we were going to certify the city of Buffalo. When I announced at a board meeting that I had registered the city to be certified, one of my board members said, "Did you tell the mayor?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. We'll tell the mayor after we're done." And that's exactly when we told the mayor, when we asked him to come and celebrate us getting it done. So how and why does a community become a habitat, a certified habitat? So New York State, if you look over here, the red stars are communities that are currently certified, and the blue stars are ones that are registered. So before we started up here, we just had Lilydale over here, which has a living population of 300 and is pretty much all garden. And then over here, downstate, there's only three more. You've got Hyde Park up here. You've got Pound Ridge there, which is certified, and then Rye, which is registered but not certified. So when I started this in 2019, there were only 2 certified and 2 additional registered but not certified habitats in the entire state. And none of them had populations over 15,000 people. So these were really small communities that were going after certification. So we decided that we were going to certify Buffalo, and that was the first one we worked on. And then as we were certifying Buffalo, people said, "Well, I want to be part of this. Can we do, can you certify my town?" And finally I just said, "Why don't we just certify the whole county?" And then somebody came and said, "Well, if you're going to certify Erie County, can you certify Niagara County?" So we registered them as well. But the benefits to community certification are multifold. So it provides a proven framework to engage citizens. This, as I said before, is a grassroots effort. Anybody can do it. It aligns with other community priorities. So a lot of communities are really focused on, keeping water runoff from going into the sewer systems and into public waterways and things like that. And this all helps that. It supports communities in creating and implementing conservation strategies. A lot of communities are concerned about the decrease in pollinators, the lack of, butterflies. The whole 9-spotted, ladybug thing is, really out there now, because now we have all these invasive ladybug species and not nine-spotted ones, which are the native ones to New York. It helps meet the clean water goals by using conservation methods, and it helps beautify a community. It builds community because people get so excited and engaged because they're doing projects together, and it'll provide national recognition. So if you look at this, Erie County, Buffalo, and Niagara County, when all 3 are certified, we will have 3 of the top 20 largest certified wildlife habitats in the country. We will be the only state that has 3 in that top 20. Erie County will be 5. Buffalo, I believe, is 17, and Niagara County will be 19. And that's huge. I mean, we've gone from virtually 0 to this in less than 3 years. So the Alliance goals for the Habitat Project are pretty simple. First of all, we wanted to positively influence the attitudes of the community members about cohabitating in an urban setting with wildlife. And probably the best example is Facebook. So we have a lot of community Facebook pages in Black Rock and Riverside, and everybody's always chatting about something. The last 4 weeks have been about snow removal, as probably most community Facebook pages have been. But before that, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when we first started this project in Buffalo, somebody would post, "Oh my God, I just saw a fox walking down the street. What should I do?" And within a matter of minutes, there would be, 60 or 70 responses with 60 or 70 different ways to get rid of that fox. Everything from, "I have a gun," or "get a trap," or "call the SPCA," or. Every single one of them would have to do with how to get rid of that fox. In November, and this is probably my proudest moment of for my community ever, in November of this past year, somebody posted, "Oh my God, I just saw a fox walking down the street." So instead of hide your children, hide your pets, hide the chickens, well, maybe you should hide the chickens, but instead of that being posted, in a matter of 15 minutes, there were 52 responses, and not one of them was how to get rid of the fox. They were things like, "Oh, well, we built homes in his backyard. Where do you expect him to be walking?" Or, "Don't worry, he'll eat the rats. We like the fox." And things like that. So the idea, and that was my yes moment, because that said to me that people are getting it. People are getting the fact that urban or suburban or rural, we can cohabitate with nature and with wildlife very easily by just simply understanding it better. We also wanted to capitalize on the flood of initiatives surrounding environmental work. The environmental stuff is the buzz in everything right now, nationally, regionally, on a community and citywide level. Everybody's worried about the environment. I mean, global warming at its finest, yes, ma'am. And what we're doing, what are we leaving to the next generations? We're starting to finally get this light bulb going off and saying, we're screwed if we don't start doing something and really paying attention to that. So really very focused. One of our state assembly members said to me one time, "Anne, if you need any help with this project whatsoever, let me know, because this is on both sides of the aisle." He said, "Nobody in politics can be against something that's improving the environment." And he's right, and that's the attitude right now. And we wanted to leverage the investment and the commitment that people are making in this region through programs like this. So we want to attract national money for more organizations to do more environmental projects. We're not taking on, I was just looking at some DEC grants, and these are for projects that are too big for my little organization. But we can partner with other organizations that are bigger than us to do some of these if we can help them, write the grants and get the money for it. We'd love to do those kinds of things. But we want to bring those investments here, and this is a great way to do it. To say that your city or your county or your region is so supportive of a healthy environment that they have thousands and thousands of people who have certified their own yards and are planting purposefully for wildlife is really a big statement, and especially when you're talking about the kinds of volumes that we have here in our region. And then we want to potentially attract more environmentally focused businesses to come here. There's a lot of folks out there doing really good stuff with sustainability and with environmentally sound practices in their businesses. They're going to relocate to an area where the environment is important to the residents. And then we wanted to increase ecotourism. Did you know the birding industry is a multi-billion, billion with a B, dollar industry? Who knew? I always thought it was just people with binoculars out in the backyard. I am not a birder. We live on an international birdway. We live on a bird migratory pathway. Our winters along the Niagara River bring in some of the most beautiful and amazing birds, and in the summertime, it is second to none. We are a Ramsar designated site. There are only 44 in the entire country, and the Niagara River is one of them because of what happens and the habitat that our Niagara River has created. We should be getting ecotourism as one of the selling points. The Bills and the Sabres and all their sports teams bring in a lot of visitors every single year. Our Tour of Gardens brings in tons and tons and tons of visitors. There is no reason why we should not be like the birding capital of the Northeast. And then we wanted to set the standard for the rest of the state to follow. There is no reason why New York State, given the diversity and the amazing beauty of the geography and the topography of this state, should only have 2 certified habitat communities in the entire state. It was sinful that those dots that map this entire area, and I think right now there are over 330 some registered habitat communities, and about 200 of those are actually certified nationwide. It is sinful that there are only 2 in New York State. And so that's why we wanted to do this. So to get this done, and you think, okay, so how do you do this? I mean, this is like a huge project. How can you get this done? Partners, partners, and partners. This is the only way we could do it. Like I said, we are a small, lean, mean, working machine, but we only have so much reach and so much bandwidth to do things. So one of the first things we did was we got our garden clubs involved. Because we managed the Northwest Buffalo Tour of Gardens, that was easy. So we asked all of our gardeners to go and register their habitats and let us know that they were registered. So on the registration, we could put these little H's here in this column that showed on the maps that they were registered habitat homes. And then we gave them a little sign to put in their lawn so that when people went to visit their houses, they could say, oh, tell me about the NWF habitat certification. Why or how is your yard a habitat? And then they talked it up, and then more people got involved. The Buffalo Tour of Gardens got involved with us. They actually did, when they went virtual in 2020, they kicked off their whole nature series with a presentation on the Habitat Project and what we were doing there. And then the East Side Garden Walk's done it, and now we're talking to a couple of the other smaller garden walks to also get them to note it as well. We engaged the Parks Department. Now, if any of you, does anybody live in the city of Buffalo? Okay, so if you know Andy Rabb from the city of Buffalo, he's the commissioner for the Parks Department. Andy is all about the budget. If it is not in his budget, he doesn't want to hear about it, he doesn't want to think about it. Well, I was in a meeting with Andy talking about something totally not habitat, and I happened to say something about the Habitat Project, and his ears perked up. He's like, what's that? Now, Andy's an old arborist guy, and he loves these kinds of things deep down in his heart. So I explained after the meeting, I explained to him what the Habitat Project was. He said, well, what can we do to help? I was like, really? It might not be in your budget. But again, this is a low budget project. So what Andy did was he had a Vista intern for a year. He gave us her as part of her job. She had to take the entire inventory of the park system, which ranges everything from little traffic circles to parks, as we know parks. And she had to inventory each one to see how many things on the checklist did they have, and which ones could be certified, and the ones that couldn't be certified, what did they need in order to become certified? And that's how she spent a portion of her year of service with the Parks Department. And we ended up with 44 city parks certifying as habitat communities. And then we found ways to get the community involved. So this was our United Way Day of Caring in 2019. We took a traffic triangle that was City of Buffalo Park inventory. There were some trees growing on it. This is at Tonawanda and Amherst Street. There were some trees growing on it. We worked with the Parks Department. We showed them what our plan was going to be. We took right in the tree area, we made triangles, and there's two. There's 1 and 2 of the 3 corners of this space. And we had the UAW workers who were volunteering for the United Way Day of Caring. They dug it all out. They put in native plants. They mulched it. We hung a bird bath from one of the trees, so we had a water source. And that thing is still thriving, and it's very little maintenance. It's less grass for the grounds crew to cut when they have to go cut it. It doesn't, we planted natives that we knew would grow if it was neglected and didn't need watering. And it's still thriving with virtually no maintenance whatsoever. So it's one of our smallest habitats that we certified other than the ladies' patio. And then we involve school kids because it's really important that the education on how to plant purposefully for a healthy environment, you start with them when they're young and they'll keep that knowledge when they're growing older. Here we have a bunch of Canisius Canisius College students in our native beds. They were removing the sycamores and the sumacs that we were growing in there so that we could rehome them. And then these are the Nichols students. So this really is, whoop, wrong button, back up. So this really is, why am I hitting the wrong button? Anyway, we'll just ignore that. So this really is the 190. And this park is a strip park. It's called George Washington Park, and it runs between Niagara Street, which is not too far over, and the 190. And it is just a long, narrow strip of a park. Well, this one end of the park is always wet because all the water just kind of drains into this low corner. And it was so bad that the Parks Department most of the time couldn't even get their lawnmowers through without it just ripping up everything. So they just ignored it, so it was kind of overgrown. So we said to Andy, we can fix this. We can put a habitat in there with plants that like the moisture. So we got the Nichols kids, we used their conservation class, they helped us design what it was gonna look like, and then they spent 2 days digging it up and digging it out and replanting it. And it's no maintenance, nobody has to water it because it gets all the water it needs, and the grounds crew is thrilled because the ground around it is drier and they have less to mow. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. And then we took some of the other projects that we were doing and we tied them into the Habitat project. So our seed bank, we did, during COVID, we've been doing drive-up seed giveaways, so people would just drive up and we drop seeds in with little grabbers into their passenger side car. We had our sunflower project. We very specifically, when we first started the sunflower project, we were doing very ornamental sunflowers. So sunflowers that had, different unusual colors or, got like gigantic size-wise. And then we discovered most of those don't have pollen because they're ornamental. They're not necessarily for cultivating. So we found a type of seed. It's called, it's a sunflower and it's called birds and bees. And it produces really big seeds and a lot of pollen. So now the majority of the seeds, we still give out some like little ones for people who want to grow sunflowers in pots, but the majority of the seeds that we give out the birds and the bees, again, so it ties in with our whole growing for a habitat. And then our native planting beds. And we also do things like, we'll help people put in rain barrels, because how many people don't even know, like, how do I attach my rain barrel to my gutter, my downspout? And then we partner with special focus groups. So Grassroots Gardens, they went through and they certified, I think, 28 or 29 of their community gardens. We obviously certified the ones that we managed the first thing off the bat. We work with the conservation classes at various high schools. Riverside Academy is a blue economy school, so they have a huge conservation program, and we get the kids out there, and they're always digging in one of our gardens or our native planting beds or doing something. And what this did was, when we were done, we launched this on May 5th of 2019. We completed it in 18 months, and we got it certified by November of 2020. When I first met with the National Wildlife Federation after I had certified, they called me up and they wanted to know more about my city and my plan and stuff. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to get it done by the end of 2020. Not realizing we were going to have a pandemic that we were going to have to do this in. And they said, well, a city the size of Buffalo is going to usually take like 3 to 4 years. And I said, yeah, you just don't know, you don't know us. We'll get this done in 18 months. And we did. So when we ended up, we had 126 private residences, 41 parks, 36 community gardens, 10 schools, 5 businesses, and 2 colleges, for a total of 220 properties that we got certified in 18 months. That was huge, and that's what gave us enough points to get the city of Buffalo done. And then the investment, so people's like, so how much did this cost to do this? Well, we got a very small grant of $5,000 that we used to buy these so that if people didn't have a water feature, we could put them in or put them in the Parks Department for them because Andy didn't have a budget. Or if somebody couldn't afford the $20 to register their habitat, we would give them the $20 and let them register their habitat. So we use that kind of as a slush fund because we didn't want economics to be a barrier for anyone to participate, especially given the community that we live and work in. The parks, between staff and what the average property owner spent on doing some things to their garden to bring it up to certification, and the staff that everybody donated time for and things like that, we estimate that the total investment by everybody into this project, either through in-kind labor or enhancements that were purchased, was over $30,000, and that's a pretty conservative guesstimate on costs. So as I mentioned, you certify by getting points. And with the city of Buffalo, we needed 400 points. If I had just done Black Rock and Riverside, I think we would have needed like 250. We needed 400 certification points. To do Erie County, we need 750 certification points. And what that means is you get 1 point for every yard that certifies. You get 2 points if it's a community green space or a park or a community garden, and you get 3 points for that, and then you get 5 points if it's a school. So that's why we did the mix. We did some parks, we did some individuals, we did some schools, and because we wanted it to be a mix. I mean, we could have just gone and certified all the City of Buffalo parks and had our number and not been done with it, but that wouldn't have done what we wanted. It wouldn't have provided the education. Then there's a bunch of administrative stuff you've got to do. Like, as I mentioned, this presentation is getting me points because I will go home and I will put the pictures in onto the NWF website for our community, and they'll say, oh yeah, you gave a presentation to the Adirondack Mountain Club. This is awesome, good for you. You get 5 points for that. So you accumulate all the points that you need from the back end stuff, and this is where my volunteers came in, by having educational material available at Plantasia this year through the Master Gardeners from Cornell Cooperative and things like that. They had a huge table for us at the fair, at the Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardener exhibit at the fair this year. So we get points for all of those things. So then we went on to certify Erie County, because a lot of the people, as I was talking about the Habitat Project, about Buffalo, a lot of people said to me, well, I live in Amherst. How can I help? It's like, well, go certify your property. You can do it. You know, get your neighbors to do it. Start to rethink. And we had more and more people who were outside of the Buffalo area proper who wanted to do something like this. It's like, go certify. So then we decided, well, why not just certify the entire county? Because we only need like 750 points, so let's do it. So our strategies were, while we were promoting the Habitat Project for Buffalo, we promoted it for everybody. And then we talked to our county leadership and asked for their support on this project. And I got to tell you, Mark Polenkars was all on board. The one day I was at an event with him this past fall, and we were talking, and I was giving him a quick update on where we were at with the Habitat Project. And I thanked him for his support, because basically, he had the Department of Environment and Planning immediately set up a Zoom with all of their department heads who might be in some way connected to this. And they have done everything from printing our brochure for us to, co-partnering with us on a lot of similar projects, like the Home for the Gnome project, not to use pesticides. Their recycling crew, they connected us with Cornell Cooperative Extension, their Parks Department, they've all participated in this. And when I said to Mark, I said, we're almost done with this. Thank you so much for your support. He said, oh yeah, and this was such an easy lift. He said, and you weren't asking for $1 million either. And I'm like, not yet, I wasn't. So, the fact that it was easy for everybody, because everybody just did a little piece of what was their job anyway, it was easy to tie it in. And then we partnered with the Niagara River Greenway. They did give us a grant to be able to do this and to go out and really spread the word about it, because they were all excited about this project as well. And as I mentioned, we connected with the Erie County Department of Environment and Planning. And then we reached into community groups. So coming to groups like yours, going to village beautification groups. Did you know that Kenmore has a group just to save the bees? Talk about a perfect partnership to get people to know about certifying their yards as habitats. These people care about the bees. Their yards are probably already habitats. They just need to certify them. And then, and other groups like the Native Plant Coalitions and things like that. And then just going into the various towns and getting the municipality leadership to sign in on it so that they start implementing these things even just on a town level. And then our update right now, this is my first public announcement of this, so you guys are in the know before this is widely publicized. We officially certified the city on December 14th we certified, and then on December 20th, we actually met all of our recertification qualifications for the upcoming year. So we officially certified in December of 2021. We announced this May 5th of 2021. We certified the entire county of Erie County in less than a year. I know. We got over 797 properties certified, and that gave us 1,111 points, and we only needed 450. So it was huge. It was really huge. Now, so then so Greenway said to us, if you're going to certify Niagara County, can you certify, or if you're going to certify Erie County, can you certify Niagara County too? Well, I had to do a little tap dancing because my board was like, that's really outside of the scope of our service area, Anne. And I'm like, I know, but we have these partnerships with other groups that are already in Niagara County that can help us with this project. So let's just do it. So we have been very quietly laying the groundwork for launching the Niagara County campaign, which will probably happen on May 5th, because Cinco de Mayo seems to be our day to really launch habitat projects and have them be successful. We're not going to break that by cursing it and doing it on another day. And right now, we're doing everything that we did in Erie County, we're going to just do in Niagara County. We're reaching out to the legislators, we're reaching out to the mayors of the towns, we're reaching out to the parks departments, and we have an inside connection because the NWF already has connections with all of the conservation teachers in every high school in Niagara County. So we're even further ahead because we don't have to worry about getting into the schools. They're doing it for us. So right now we have not officially launched. As I said, we're going to do that this spring. But right now we have 115 habitats for 139 points. We need 400 points. So if any of you know anybody in Niagara County, does anybody live in Niagara County? No. Okay, well, if you know anybody in Niagara County, get them to certify their yards, because we need those points. And this is telling me, and almost all, you can tell by the numbers, the 115 habitats, most of those are our homes. So we need to be really working with the parks, with the community, the large community groups and things like that. So our current habitat project goals are really get people in the communities to certify their yards, which we've done, certify Buffalo as a National Wildlife Federation habitat, which we did, certify Erie County, which we did, certify Niagara County, which we are going to be doing, and then really just create a region-wide ecosystem where everybody lives harmoniously with wildlife and that they know they're safe. Because wildlife honestly doesn't know that if he crosses the border from Buffalo to Kenmore, he is now not in a habitat area, or if he goes from Erie County into Niagara County, he's not in a habitat area. Our wildlife should know that no matter where they go in our region, there will be habitat-friendly areas for them to get food and rest and raise their young. Now, just because we're done with Buffalo in Erie County doesn't mean we're done. So we need to keep getting more green spaces certified, both in the city and in the county and in the region. Because we have annual outreach goals and recertification goals that we have to meet. Fortunately, because the program is really running well, those are pretty easy to do, but we still want to do that and keep that certification annually. And then we want to expand to additional communities and counties. And my personal goal is ultimately to get every county in New York State certified as a habitat and have New York State be the first state in the country to have every county as a certified wildlife habitat. Now, I'm getting older, so we got a lot of work to do if we're going across the state. But we just recently have been working with the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, and they registered Chautauqua County earlier this year, January 2nd, I think they actually did their registration. So I've been working with them on the strategies to get Chautauqua County certified, which means all 3 counties that border Lake Erie will become a region of certified counties, which will be huge for us. And you know, again, it's one more county and we just keep moving across the state. So how can you all help? Now, are you all sitting there going through the checklist wondering if your yard's certified? Okay, well, go certify, because that's the first thing. And get your neighbors to certify. You know, if your neighbor's got a yard where they're planting stuff that you know is good for pollinators and birds and, you know, other little critters that may be coming through, you know, tell them about the program. Give them, you know, direct them to the NWF website. If you live and work in a county that isn't already registered or certified, or you know somebody that lives in another county that might be interested in this, you give them my name and number. I am more than happy to get them enthusiastic about certifying their counties and moving forward. And if you're in Erie or Niagara County, and you know other organizations like this one or any organization, you know, reach out to them, tell them about the program. And if they want somebody to come and talk to them about it, we are more than happy to come and do a roadshow and give them, as long as our computers are compatible with their projectors, we can do the roadshow. And engage your leadership in a conversation about healthy communities and sustainable practices in the county. Right now, this fit perfectly with Erie County because they are looking to get their, I think it's their silver certificate for sustainability. So this fit perfectly into their overall goals for the county. So it was natural, and more importantly, you know, it's a perfect fit for what we want to do with our native wildlife. Just really quickly, a couple of the projects that have kind of sprung off of this, lots of clover. So in our community, we don't have a lot of vacant lots, but we do have some, and one of them was a big triple lot right on a very busy street on Tonawanda Street, and it's an eyesore. The city owns the triple lot. Nobody's expressed any interest in buying it. The city is responsible for mowing it, which means it happens maybe twice a year, which means for most of the summer, the grass is this high. Tonawanda Street's very windy, so a lot of garbage gets blown in there. There's probably rats living in there. When they mow, they just come and mow it down. They don't rake it out, so then you have dried grass laying there for months on end. It's really just an eyesore all the time. So I went to Commissioner Finn and said, how would you feel about us taking that lot and planting it with dwarf white clover? And he was like, why would you want to do that? And I said, because the clover will choke out the grass. It will provide pollen for the bees. It will provide food for the bunnies. You won't have to mow it anymore because it will only get 3 to 6 inches high, so it will save you costs on mowing, and it will look so much nicer for the neighborhood. And he's like, well, okay, if you want to try it, you can. And I said, okay, with the understanding that if this works, you will strongly consider doing this in other vacant lots throughout the city of Buffalo, and any cost savings that the city has, you will put towards a retreeing program for our communities. And he's like, okay, we can make that deal. So we planted, and we call it lots of clover, because we're planting lots of clover in lots. So lots of clover was officially launched this fall. We raked out and roughed up all the grass that was there. We had to mow it as low as they could possibly mow it. We had kids out there spreading seed. So we've got the initial seeding down. As we get closer into towards spring, we're going to throw some surface seeds on it again to continue. So for the cost of probably about 15 pounds of white clover, this project goes off, it should make our whole city more beautiful and more environmentally friendly. And then Home for the Gnome is the project that the Erie County has. They have this great 4-foot gnome that they take around, and the gnome's goal is really to say, you know, your lawn is a good home for a gnome as long as you don't use pesticides. And so we've been working with them, and the gnome comes around and hangs out with us at various functions that we do. And then our last one is the Birds on the Niagara, which is actually this weekend. It is the only international winter bird festival in the world. It's February 10th to the 13th. That's this coming weekend. Registration, it's virtual this year, but there are some in-person workshops. There's some great workshops like the Owl Prowl and with Tom Kerr from the Audubon Society, and just some really wonderful things going on both sides of the border. There's activities on the Canadian side, there's activities on the US side. We thought we were going to be able to do a live event this year, but COVID said no, virtual. You can go register for free, and you can get access to all of the virtual programming. And there are some amazing speakers lined up. I think there's 22 or 23 virtual presentations that you can access free of charge. Some of the workshops do charge like a $10, and you can go register on that. But the website is birdsontheniagara.org. If you're interested at all in any of the things, any of the activities, they're going to be talking about the Lights Out initiative to minimize the lighting along the Niagara River during bird migration season. So the birds stay on their own migratory path and don't get distracted by lights, and even programs like that. So that's another one that we're actively engaged in, and we work on the planning with them. If you have any questions, call me, email me. My card is here, my number's, or my email's up there. Get in touch. We're happy to talk to you. We've got lots of educational material. Does anybody have any questions? No? I'm sorry, what? If a family wanted to certify their yard, yes. Is there a cost associated? $20. And then you get like a year's supply of National Wildlife magazines, which are fantastic. You get lots of email notifications about different topics and different blogs and things like that that they publish. You get a really cool certificate. You can buy a sign. They have all kinds of signs, from straight, normal metal ones to really fancy ornate ones that you can hang on your garden gate or wherever you want to put them. Or I have a garden flag in mine. It's kind of fading right now, but it's still hanging there. So yeah, for $20. Yes, Jen?
Is Forest Lawn one of the certified places?
I'm sorry, what?
Is Forest Lawn Cemetery one of the certified places?
They are not yet. Yet, I say yet. But yes, they certainly qualify. They have all of the elements right there. And that's how easy it is, you know? It's just a question of, you know, getting to them and getting somebody to say, oh yeah, I'll go on and I'll do that.
Have you reached out to like various churches?
We've just started doing that in Erie County because a lot of the churches have grounds crews and things. There's one church in Williamsville that has 2 acres behind their church, and a friend of my daughter-in-law's uncle is the guy who's on the grounds committee there. And when he heard about the Habitat Project, he said, you know, like, how can I turn this 2 acres into, you know, like a wildflower, you know, habitat thing? So we've been working with him. His biggest thing was, how do I get 2 acres tilled so that I can plant it? And I'm like, how about a little at a time, or reach out to the town parks department and ask the town to do it. So he's now working with the town to see if they will come in the spring and take out the grass on most of this 2 acres and transition it so that he can then plant like wildflowers and things like that and certify the churchyard. But he's our first big church. So yes, it's definitely on our radar to tap into all of them. Like I said, this project doesn't end just because we certified a community. This is continually educating and expanding the message. Anybody else?
Does something like drip irrigation count as
I'm sorry,
Does something like drip irrigation for a garden,
yes,
we run it for like an hour in the morning?
yeah. You can irrigate however you want. You know, the recommendation is, you know, don't use your faucet unless you absolutely have to, if you can set up a rain barrel. And soaker hoses are so much more effective when you're doing watering because it's gonna get right to the ground. You're not watering the top of the plants rather than sprinklers or automatic watering systems. But, you know, you gotta water, you gotta water.
Have you reached out to like the NFTA to do like the plants on top of their bus?
So one of our environmental economic development projects for the Alliance is we got our second Buffalo Main Street grant initiative to redo some of the storefronts on Niagara Street. We had one done 2 years ago. We redid 4 storefronts. This time we got enough money to redo 5 storefronts, which is great because Niagara Street itself is getting all redone. And part of our money, we have money in our budget to do some streetscaping. And one of our proposals is that one of the bus stops gets the garden on the top. The NFTA is very hesitant about that because they are just redoing a lot of their bus stops now in order to be more uniform and consistent. But we're talking, we have to spend the money by the end of this year. So we're discussing design options and opportunities and trying to find a way to make sure that all of their sustainability, self-sustaining objections are met by the design. And we're working with UB on actually designing what it would look like and what would grow there.
Okay, well, I think we have.
I know we're over time,
Any more questions?
but thank you.
Contact Anne.
Yes, and I am here, so thank you all. Thank you.